There is something called a covenant. There is something called a covenant. And this is an agreement that is made between any two parties. There is something called a covenant. And most of us are living according to covenants that we have made. And those covenants are alive today because they still speak on your behalf. You have engaged yourself in something, whether you knew it or you didn't know what you were doing. But the truth is, because of that act, you formed a covenant. Some of you, it came through a relationship, an intimate relationship. You didn't know what you were doing, but you covenanted yourself into something that is very difficult for you to come out of right now. Some of you, it could be anything that you might have done without knowing what you were doing. But that created a covenant that is difficult for you to come out of. So God honors a covenant. God honors a covenant. Maybe you can do all these things and wonder, but why is God not helping me to come out of this thing? God honors a covenant. If a covenant says this and that will happen, it will happen for this long, then that covenant will remain, no matter how much you pray, no matter how much you fast. And this is not because God is not there. It is because the covenant that you got yourself into needs you to be much more stronger, needs you to bring out something stronger to oppose it, stronger to deal with it. And the only thing that has such power, the only thing that can help you is when you sharpen or you shift or you cultivate your relationship with Jesus, because Jesus is the only one who has the power to get you out of that covenant, to get you out of those things, to get you out of those attachments. Nobody in the face of the earth has that kind of power. Only God, through His Son, can be able to save you. So you having been covenanted is not something to take lightly. It is something that you need to assess and try to pick and understand what it is. Today we have what we call bloodline curses. Bloodline curses. And these bloodline curses or generational curses, they came about because people were covenanted to something. People who came before you, they got themselves into something. And they have made a decision for you without you even knowing it. They made a decision that you are going to live your life a certain way, and you didn't even have the power to say, I am not a part of this. And you can see that even today, when you are trying to say, I am not a part of this, it's very much difficult because that covenant is still standing. There are things you are agreed to that you need to find a way to disagree with before you can do certain things in your life. Some of you want to get married, but you covenanted yourself to your previous relationships. You do not know how, but somehow there was a covenant that you agreed to in a way that you never even expected it to be. So you need to find a way to deal with that in such a way that there will be power to overcome the power of that covenant. Because unless you engage a higher power, that power will still overpower you, and you are going to live a miserable life. You are going to wonder what is happening with my life. That covenant will still be speaking. That covenant will not be easily broken. It needs you to pray prayers now that are intentional. It needs you also to live a life that is intentional. Know who you are. You don't just wake up and do whatever you want. You have to understand that my life has been covenanted to something, because you will see the results. You'll see the things that surround you, and those things will show you that there's a covenant that is speaking around my life. I spoke the same thing when I spoke about a strong man. The strong men, they come because of a covenant that was made, the covenant that is there, the covenant that you need to break. So you also need to have a covenant. You also have to have a covenant with God. And this covenant is not something you can just break easily, or you can just do whatever. If you said to God, God, I'll meet you at 12 o'clock every day in prayer, that is one of the covenants. That is one of the best covenants you can do for yourself. Meeting God at a certain time or certain times of the day and calling unto Him and speaking to Him. This covenant, it will be able to be stronger with time. It will be stronger with your consistency and your persistence. And then it will be able to overpower every other covenant that has happened before you. Every other covenant that has been speaking before you. Covenant of sickness, covenant of whatever, covenant of failed relationships, all these things. They will be overpowered by that covenant that you create with God. And that covenant is the strongest covenant ever. This is why people who know these things or who understand these things, they create that covenant. They make sure that they create that covenant. It's easy. You just come to the Lord and you tell Him what you want to agree with Him. You just tell Him that, Lord, I want to pray for this long every day. Lord, I want to give this much every week. It depends on you. You just make a covenant and just know that that's an agreement that you are making with the Lord. It is up to you. It is up to what you are able to do and what you think it is necessary for you to do. But for you to overpower the covenants that are evil, that are speaking over your life, you need to create your covenant with God. It is the same thing with what I spoke about last time of an evil altar being overpowered by the altar of God. It is the same thing, because these covenants are speaking like the altars that have been formulated in order to keep those covenants speaking. Altars are what's formed in order to keep the covenants alive, in order to make sure that those covenants become stronger and those covenants are the way they are supposed to be. Like, for example, when I say you make a covenant with God that I'm going to be meeting you and praying to you for this long in these times of the day. That's a covenant. So when you go to the altar, you go to the altar because of the covenant you made with God. Because of the covenant you made with God. There are covenants that you can make with your children, for example, that when they come into this world, immediately they come into this world, you just speak a word upon them and declare to the Lord that, Lord, these are not only my children, these are yours. These are yours. Shape them, make them whatever you desire. I will be here as a vessel of honor, as a vessel that you are using in order to make sure that this comes to pass. So a covenant is very important, and a covenant will always stand. If you make a covenant with the devil right now, and that covenant speaks on your behalf, God will not have any dealings with that covenant. He will honor that covenant. God honors every covenant, whether it's good or it's bad. So anything that you covenant yourself into or you agree unto, God will respect that. God will respect that. So it's easier, or it's much better for you to create a covenant that will speak for you than speak against you. Shalom.